Okay, so for this problem in Chapter 4, we're going to be looking at two different department overhead rates. And we've got a Whitney Furniture Company. So again, they use department overhead rates rather than a plant-wide overhead rate. And that's how they're going to allocate their overhead. The two departments that they're going to have is what they call the cutting department and the finishing department. And they've already calculated the overhead rates for you at $9 per machine hour for cutting. And for the finishing, it's going to be $18 per direct labor hour. So in this problem, we've got job 484, use the following direct labor hours and machine hours in the two manufacturing departments. So if you click this icon, you're going to get this box pop up over here. You notice here you've got the cutting and the finishing, direct labor hours, machine hours. So for the first one, question says how much overhead is allocated to job 484. So when you've got the cutting department is going to be based on machine hours. So if I look at the cutting department over here, I've got 8 machine hours. So that's the number you want to put in here. You multiply that by the overhead rate, which they've already given. So 8 times 9 would be $72. For the finishing department, they use direct labor hours. Finishing has 7 direct labor hours. So that 7 is what you want to put right there. And the overhead rate that they gave you is $18. You multiply that, you get 126. If you add that together, that's going to give you $198 total allocated overhead for this particular job. And note, that will also be our third product cost in the next part when they ask us to get the overall cost of the job. So we've already got the overhead part of it. We just have to get the direct materials and the direct labor. So in the second part, it says, assume that direct labor is paid at $24 per hour, and they use the $2,400 of direct materials. That's one product cost. And it says, what's the total cost of the job? So notice product cost number 1 right here, that's given at $2,400. Now to get the direct labor cost, they gave you the rate. Be careful on the direct labor hours, it's 2 plus 7, so there's 9 hours. So a total of 9 hours times a rate, that's $216. I'm gonna label that as product cost number 2. And then of course we already calculated the third one in the previous part, that's 198 of the overhead. If you add all this up, you get $2,814 as the total cost of the job. Okay, so in this problem in Chapter 4, we're going to be looking at activity-based costing. And it says the Fuller Company uses ABC to account for its chrome wheel manufacturing process, management believes, and they've identified 4 different activities that incur overhead cost. These are material handling, machine setup, insertion of parts, and finishing. It says the budgeted activity costs for the upcoming year and the allocation base are as follows. So you click that icon, I've already done that, and this is the box that pops up. Notice this is the budgeted overhead, your estimated overhead. So you got material handling, machine setup, insertion of parts, and finishing. Add those up, there's $143,400 of total manufacturing overhead. And of course, notice they give you the base right there. So in the first part, it says compute the cost allocation rate for each activity. First, identify the formula, then compute the rate for each activity. Well, the formula is always your estimated overhead divided by the allocation base. That's the same as Chapter 3. So the numerator, though, in all of these is simply your estimated overhead. So if you go back to that little box over there, they've already given it to you, 12,000, 3,400, 48,000, 80. That's going to be your individual numerators. And then you have to divide by the base. And the base they give you right up here, it says the wheels are expected to use 3,000 parts, 10 setups, and consume 2,000 hours of finishing time. And you'll notice that's going to be the base. You just plug that in right there, 3,000, 10. And then of course, for 2 of these, for the material handling and the insertion, they use the same base. It's the parts. So notice 3,000 is used twice there. But this would be the allocation rates for those 4 activities. Now, once you get these rates, eventually what you're going to have to do is to allocate them. You're going to take those rates and then multiply those by the activity to get the allocated overhead. And we'll do that in the next requirement, and I'll show you that on the next slide. Okay, so for the next actually 2 requirements, you're going to use those rates to actually assign the overhead. So first for job 420, which they give you right here, and I'll remind you of the rates. You had $4 per part type, it was $3.40 per setup, it was $16 per part type, and then it was $40 per hour. So what you're going to do then is multiply by the activity. So for job 420, it was 200 parts. it was 2 setups, and again 200 parts, and then the finishing time was 130. And so that's what you're essentially doing is rate times activity, rate times activity. You multiply those out, and notice when you add them up, you're going to get the total cost of $9,880. And then of course you do the same thing for job 510, except in that case I'm just going to change the parts. It was 425 parts, it was 4 setups, it was 350 hours, and again we'll use the 425 again because it's again parts, and then you've got the 350 finishing hours, and again it's 4 times 425, it's 340 times 4, it's 16 again times 425 because again the parts was used twice, and then it's going to be 40 times the 350, and then of course you add all those up, and that's going to give you the total assigned overhead of $23,860. Okay, so for this homework problem, we're going to be doing a comparison of your plant-wide overhead rate, and then eventually to ABC. We've got, they make custom products. This is the Sydney industry. And up here it says again, they traditionally have used plant-wide manufacturing overhead rate. It's based on machine hours to allocate overhead to its products. The company estimates that it will incur $1 million in total manufacturing overhead and use 10,000 hours. So that's what they initially do. So when you click on these icons, they're going to give you some other activities. I went ahead and did that. That's going to be this box right here, where they give you 3 different activities that add up to the 1 million. This is essentially what you're going to do when you do the ABC part of it. And of course, they've also given you the basis. So under requirement number 1, they simply want you to come up with the rate and then the cost of the job. And the first part I'm showing you right here, if you just take that $1 million divided by the 10,000 machine hours, which was given right up here, that gives you $100 in your plant-wide overhead rate. Now, to get the total cost of the job, you need to know some more information. You're going to have to click this icon right there, which I'm going to show you that on the next slide. But it's a very consistent format. I go by my 3 product costs, direct materials, I label that as 1, direct labor as 2, and then my allocated overhead is number 3. But again, I'm going to show you how you get these numbers in the next slide. Okay, so I went ahead and clicked on the second icon because that's going to give you all the data to answer this part of the problem. So to get product cost number 1, if you've got 290 pounds of direct material, you just multiply that by $65 per pound. That's going to give you your product cost number 1. To get the direct labor, it's 70 direct labor hours times 20. That's going to give you the 1,400, so that's the second one. And then to get the allocated overhead rate, it's going to be the rate, which is $100. Multiply that by the number of machine hours, which is 80. They give you that right there. And that's going to give you $8,000. You add that all that up, that'll be $28,250. So in the second part, they want you to do activity-based costing. Same thing. Under activity-based costing, the first 2 product costs will be exactly the same. The only thing that's going to change is the third one, which is your assigned overhead. Again, we'll show you that on the next slide. So again, doing ABC, you already know 2 of the 3 product costs. I'll just kind of check those off right there. Those are the same as the previous one. You just have to get the new overhead allocation. So if I'm back to my initial box, I check with those activities. Notice you've got the 400,000, the 350, 250, that all adds up to $1 million. So essentially you're allocating that $1 million over 3 activities. You then divide by the base, which they've given to you, 10,000, 5,000, and 1,000. And these are the different rates you come up with. $40 per machine hour, 70 per order, and then $250 per pound. So then what you have to do then is go back to the previous icon, and then you're going to take the $40 per machine hour and multiply by the number of machine hours. You take the $70 per order and multiply by the number of orders, and then you take the $250 per pound and multiply that by the number of pounds. And again, all that will be in the previous slide. Once you do that, the previous icon, I can't get those up at the same time. Once you multiply those out, that's going to give you that overhead allocated of $14,040. And then you add that up, and that's going to give you the total cost of the job, which is $34,290. And you'll notice that that gives you a vastly different number than the previous one. Last part says, if you were a manager, which cost estimate would provide more useful information, and how might you use this? It says the cost estimate based on the activity-based costing rates is what you want to put in there. would provide more useful information because this cost estimate takes into account the specific resources used by each product. Hint, that's cause and effect. It says information can be used to price jobs based on more accurate costs. So again, it's all about accuracy. Okay, so in this problem, we're going to be comparing gross profit, comparing the ABC cost approach versus the plant-wide overhead rate. I went ahead and clicked on the icon so you can see the box. Here's the data that they've given you. You've got two different products, standard and deluxe. They give you the ABC cost for ABC and then the plant-wide overhead rate cost. So we're going to compare those. And then they also give you the product cost and sales price down below. You got direct materials, that's product cost number 1. Direct labor, which I label that as product cost number 2. And then of course, depending on which method you're using, whether it's ABC or traditional, you would have your product cost number 3 given to you already. So they've actually already done all the work for you. They just want you to kind of do some more critical thinking and analyzing to see how your gross profit would change based on your different cost. So under the first part, it says compute the gross profit per wheel if they used ABC. So of course, to get gross profit, it's sales price minus your cost is your gross profit. We already know sales price is given right there. We just have to get our cost data put together. Guys, they've already given this to you. So you got product cost number 1, 2, and 3. All those are over here. You just have to organize it. So notice for the standard, you've got $30 given to you right here. That's your product cost number 1. $45.40 for labor. That's product cost number 2. And then we're going to use the $300 for ABC, which is given right there. That's your third one. For deluxe, you do the same thing. The 47 is given to you. The 54 is given to you. And then again, the 486 you're using right over here. You add all those up, you get a unit cost for standard to be $375.40, for deluxe to be $587. So then you go to the second part to get the gross profit. Since that's the cost, the sales price for standard is given at $490. You subtract out the cost, you get gross profit per wheel of $114.60. For deluxe, the sales price is given at $670. You should subtract out the cost. That gives you a gross profit per wheel of $83. So in the second part, you're doing the exact same thing, except you're just going to have a different overhead cost, which changes your total cost, which will then change your gross profit. So we'll look at that on the next slide. Okay, so again, for the plant-wide overhead rate, the 1 overhead rate, notice the first two are exactly the same. Product costs 1 and 2, direct material and direct labor are the same. The third one's going to be different. You just go right over here and pull that number over. So 340.60 and 445.40. You add all those up, you get 416 and 546.40. And then on the second slide, and the last slide, I'll put it all together. I'll show you how to subtract that from your sales price to get the gross profit, and then you can see how that's different than the ABC. So again, the final wrap up again, you take the cost, there's 416, 546.40, you put those right there. You subtract those from the sales price, and notice that gives you the gross profit per wheel for both the standard and deluxe using the plant-wide overhead rate. And then of course, the question says, which product line is more profitable in the company? Of course, the standard model is more profitable than the deluxe. The activity-based costing data generally is more accurate, so always think accuracy. ABC systems have more cost categories, and ABC cost assignments more accurately is what you want to put right there. And then the last part, just want you to do some comparisons. Says the ABC system is likely to pass the cost-benefit test because Trudeau Corporation manufactures 2 different products that use different amounts of resources is what you want to put there. And it says the old cost system appears broken because profits have been declining, even though the company, here we go, shifted its product mix towards the product that had appeared most profitable under the old system.